Council, I'd like to call this regular council meeting of May 5th, 2022 to order with adoption of the agenda. Someone want to make that motion for me? Councillor Ryan, seconded by Councillor Brooks Hill. All in favor? Motion's carried. Adoption of the minutes from the regular council meeting of May 3rd. Someone want to make that motion for me? Councillor Brooks Hill, seconded by Councillor Charlotte. All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Any business arising from those minutes? Seeing none, I'm going to go on to announcements from the mayor. So a lot of you may have heard we had a house fire this morning and loss of property, total destruction. However, no loss of life or injury. So I am grateful that that family was able to get out with their pets and are safe. And they just got an email recently from BC Hydro. Martha Creek Boat Launch will be reopening tomorrow, May 6th, ahead of schedule. They're able to complete their work. They are suggesting that safety is still the #1 issue. The water is low because of construction, but they're definitely going to be reopening. So happy to see that. Going to move on to item 7A, bylaws. Someone want to put that motion on the table for me, please? Councillor Palmer.
That the Municipal Ticket Information System Amendment Bylaw number 2306 be adopted.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Brooks Hill. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 7B. Someone want to put that motion on the table, please? Councillor Brooks Hill.
The 2022-2026 5-year financial plan bylaw number 2325 be read a first, second, and third time.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Charlotte. Any discussion on the motion? Councillor Palmer.
Question for the Director of Finance. So the motion on the table is for first, second, and third reading, and this has happened the last couple of years. Prior years, was it not normal for it to go to first and second reading, and then no, it's always been first, second?
That is correct, through your worship. It's always been first, second, and third. The change during COVID was we added on adoption as well.
Right. Okay.
Right.
So we've gone back to first, second, and third only.
Okay.
Okay. Any further comments from anyone? Councillor Early?
Just one of the objectives, I guess, when we present the budget package was that it circulates, and I don't see any comments back or anything, or any feedback from the public on the budgeting information that we circulate out. I'm just wondering, maybe that's an indication of a flaw in the or the detail that's provided. Maybe we need to condense it. So.
Any comments, Ms. McCabe?
Yeah, through your worship, to Councillor Elliott, the public comments and the feedback from that was provided at Tuesday's meeting. And yes, you're right. There was 2 comments received, and they were included in the package, and neither one of them really had a lot to say specifically about the particulars of the budget. More about one of them was more about the processes and the challenges that council is facing and will continue to face. Kind of recognizing those challenges is how I took it. So, yeah.
Any further comment?
Well, I think it just relates to it's a complicated issue. We need to get a clear, I guess it's some wordsmithing to make it palatable to the public, and so it's not such an onerous task to understand the budget. So I think that's as a direction as we move to improve our communication, we definitely focus on this because it's a key element in our future, and people should know.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Any other comments, Councillor Palmer?
Thank you, Mayor Sulz. Just in response to Councillor Elliott, that difficulty of making the budget simple to understand, I think is just simply impossible. We've been through this for a while.
I don't think there's ever been an attempt to make it simple and readable. You might say it's impossible, but I believe it can be done.
Yeah. Fair enough, through the mayor. We've had quite a bit of discussion on it. we've had a fair bit of discussion on the financial plan. I've made it very clear right from the onset that I thought it was too little, too late, that we haven't dove deep enough into the whole financial plan. However, we've gone through a number of steps and we've got to this point where we're at today. I will not be in favor of the financial plan. I think I was the only one that was opposed to it in some of the earlier stages, but we are where we are at today. And I'm not going to repeat stuff that I've said in the past, basically. Yeah.
All right, good. Thanks. Councillor Charlotte.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I agree with my fellow councillors that this process has been something we've struggled with for our entire term. And it sounds like in the past as well, because it is such a beast to try and explain all of the things that it is that we do. And I don't think that simplifying it is the answer, because it's too complex. There's no simplification to be had. But to be able to engage the public in these conversations, in these master plans, and in our levels of service conversation is where I think there's really some room to dig deep on any one topic. But then the budget process should be the culmination of that work. So I'd expressed that when we first looked at that budget guide, that it was a very linear pattern, where I see it more of a circular pattern, that these conversations should be feeding into the next budget, and those comments, any comments we get back, or discussions around levels of service and budgeting, that it is a living document, not a static document. But I think that'll come, hopefully, and I'm grateful that we're all on the same page that we want to be more effective. And we do want to invite the public into this conversation, not hide it behind closed doors or complicated reports. The more we can make that palatable and understandable to a layperson, and showing them where those comments go to be able to feed into these budget conversations later, I think will help build that trust and make it a more functional discussion with the community.
Thank you for the comment. Any other comments from council? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Note to Councillor Palmer is opposed. Balance of council in favor. This motion is passed. Moving on to item C. Someone want to put that motion on the table for me, please? Councillor Brooksville.
That the 2022 tax rates bylaw number 2326 be read a first, second, and third time.
And is there a seconder for this? Councillor Charlotte. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Charlotte.
I'm assuming this has been prepared with the same guidelines as in past years, with finding that balance between residential and business. I was really pleased to hear at Silga last week that the provincial government is looking to explore how property taxes and municipal finances are actually managed and regulated. So hopefully we'll be able to have a more fulsome conversation on that as the province develops it. I think it's an interesting conversation, and I think the story in Revelstoke is pertinent to that provincial conversation because of the challenges that we've been facing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? No questions, no concerns. All right, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Note that Councillor Palmer is opposed. Balance of council in favor. Motion is passed. Moving on to item number D. Does someone want to make that motion on the table for me, please?
No, there actually isn't a motion. There. Oh, there is on that screen.
Yeah. The fees and charges bylaw. You want me to read it, or you want it?
I've got my glasses.
You can see it.
I
cannot see that.
That the fees and charges amendment bylaw number 2327 be read a first, second, and third time.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Charlotte. Discussion on the motion. Any comments on the fees and charges amendment bylaw? Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough decision for me. But first of all, I would like to note, as has already been noted, I voted against the last two, and it was because of some of the earlier processes and where I see that we need to be more aggressive. Council needs to be more aggressive in addressing the financial issues right early on. This I'm repeating over and over again, so I'll say it one more time, that we need to really get to work right away in the fall. Staff needs to get to work, which they're doing. being well prepared by September. So because there's a lot of work to do with the new election, with the new people coming in. And we need to have really, really more in-depth questions as to provision of service and where we will go with taxation in the following years. And it's for that reason that we haven't had those discussions that was opposed to that. At the same time, I am very appreciative of the financial staff or all of the staff, and especially the package that was provided this year. I found it really well done. The binder and the presentation of the material was well done. So thank you for that. I know that has nothing to do directly with the water and sewer, although we've had pretty good discussions on the water and sewer, and I'm going to be a little bit torn on how I vote on that. 'Cause, yeah.
Okay, thank you for that comment. And yes, as we discussed, you and I have definitely discussed about getting in, starting that work in the fall so that we can get some things passed, get some things understood by the community and by this council or any council for that matter, as far as our capital projects and where we need to go so that we can actually get some things out into the community, get our RFPS process done where we can maybe get things done for a lesser price. So working on that right from the get-go after the election is definitely a goal. So any other comments, Councillor Elliott, then Councillor Palmer, and then I'll go online if there's any comments.
So we're working on separating the utilities and the fees for water and sewer on next year's bill from our tax numbers.
Correct.
So those fees are rational easier to explain to the public, and these are the costs of providing the service. The actual physical costs are just divided, and these are what we need to charge to make it work.
Right.
And so that's easy justification. And I think that's a move that we're taking, and we decided that that's it's a route that we've chosen on.
Right.
That's a positive step in our financial information outlay to the public. Regarding the taxes themselves, we fought hard to get it to 4% for this year. It was 1% last year, and we're less than the inflation rate. So if there's a positive message going out to the public, we've stayed within that restriction. So I think that's a positive note that we should let out there or reinforce when we release the news.
Yeah, and so just for clarification, Ms. McCabe, 4.5 is where we're at? That's correct. Okay. All right. Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Mayor Sulz. So just on the water and sewer rates, I'm satisfied with the sewer rates, specifically because of the work that was done through the liquid waste management plan. We have significant updates that are now mandatory going ahead because that's basically our license with the province.
Right.
And so a lot of the fee increases, even though they're huge, is reflective of that. A little bit more reticence on the water side and some disappointment on both water and sewer on not fully addressing the DCCs adequately, in my opinion. And then there's this part that we haven't had a lot of discussion is the residential compared to the business commercial. The impacts on the residential, it's a lot, but it's not huge, in actual dollars coming out of the pockets of residential. For some of the businesses, this is going to hurt. The increases is definitely businesses in the commercial areas. It's definitely going to hurt. And it would have been nice to have looked at that a little bit deeper, but those are just some of my comments as to, where I'm going on the vote. Thanks.
All right. No, appreciate that. Any other comments online? Councillors, Councillor Ryan, Councillor Gillette, any comment?
I would echo Councillor Palmer's comment about DCCs, but other than that, this is looking fine.
All right, thank you. Councillor Elliott?
One of the things I've asked several times is about comparable to other communities. And we still don't have that information. Where do we rate compared to a similar sized town, a similar sized, environment? we never get that information, and it's a constant sore spot for me. We're making decisions in a bubble here, and I say, if we decide on one rate and someone down the road is half, then we should be looking at our numbers. Well, where are we doing wrong? What are they doing right? Or we should be judging, gathering as much information and making comparable as part of our decision process. We should be looking at the comparisons.
Well, I think, we can look at that, and I'll go to Mr. Black or Ms. McCabe here in a moment, but when we look at it, and from what we've been told from staff already, is that it comes down to what our operations cost to run. I'm not saying that what you're saying is wrong. We should be able to know what the others charge, but our costs may differ because of our size and because of the equipment we're using. So Councillor Palmer, do you have a comment before I go to staff?
Yeah, I'd just like to point out that staff actually did provide some comparables. It may not have been deep enough, but there was some comparables, and we did have some discussion.
Very minor discussion, and they were, and the comparables were very distinct. They were at odds to what, somewhat at odds to who we are and what we are as a community.
Okay. So any further comment, Mr. Black or Ms. McCabe, regarding that? I'm not going to belabor the process, but just if you have any comment.
I will comment about the comparables. Sorry, Steve.
Sorry.
The challenge with the comparables is the fact that most communities are metered and not flat rate, and you are relying on the information how they decide what the average home. They don't provide business rates, unfortunately. It's residential, but I have to get the province to provide me with that information because we should all be giving it to them. All the municipalities should be giving it to them. And so, yes, but I did find that a bit of a challenge because not there's a mix. There's a number of flat rates still, but are they comparable or not? And in the end, I'm sure Mr. Black will state that, it comes down to how many users do we have and how much does it cost to run? So somebody else might be spending the same amount to run theirs, but they might have more users, that kind of thing. It's a fixed cost as well. So yeah, it's very difficult to do the comparables and attempt, we've done our best this year to provide some, and we'll try to expand on that for next year. But it's definitely difficult because you're not comparing apples to apples, unfortunately.
All right, Mr. Black, and then I'll go to Councillor Chalette.
Thank you, Your Worship. I can't add much more to what Director McCabe has added to this. It also is dependent on the amount of investment that we do on a regular basis. So if we invest, if engineering had prepared an O&M budget 10 years ago, and we'd been investing in the system at that level, the rates would be higher than they are currently, not based upon what they're changing to. So the comparable is rather difficult because if one system is investing to make sure that the level of service is 99% operational and we have very few breaks ever in the system, then that would show that we would be charging more per unit for that service. In this case, we have, in my opinion, been underinvesting in our system. And so therefore the change, the delta in the fees then become greater because we're now trying to play catch up, much like the pavement program. And yes, we certainly can provide the comparables, but as Director McCabe has indicated, it is very difficult for us to make sure it is apples to apples unless we know exactly what their capital plan is and their O&M plans are. And we unfortunately just don't have the bandwidth to have that sort of level of detail.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Chalette and then back to Councillor Elliott for follow-up.
Thank you, Worship. And I think one of the things I'm hearing is there's two sides to the story to get comparables. And one of it is just to see how we position against other communities, not whether or not it's actually a comparable bill, but just to see where we fit in that grand scheme of things. So comparing it to restaurants, for example, you look at the costing of your menu, sure, but you also look at what the market will bear. And so balancing those two things. So looking at our operational budget and our plans of what does it actually cost us to do these things, but then knowing what in a sense, what that market rate is amongst communities, while recognizing it's not the same thing as in a restaurant where you would take a burger off the menu if it doesn't make money. In this sense, we cannot turn off the taps. We need to make this work. So one thing I do appreciate was Councillor Palmer's comment about the business impact of this increase. And I think it is really important to reiterate what we've talked about before with water metering. And I really appreciate the fact that we are starting to meter for one customer for the agricultural side of things, but then that will hopefully also lead into more opportunity to do water metering for the business community. I think there's a huge incentive there to be able to reward businesses that are able to be conserving the water and not putting pressure on the system, rather than a flat rate per business type, because there's a large range in what that can look like, and I really want to incentivize our community members to participate in that conservation. But the big tool there is that water metering. So hopefully in time we will get there, and in the meantime, I really appreciate all the progress in the reporting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Elliott, follow-up.
The first part of Ms. Charlette's message there about having comparables. I mean, I hate hearing, we've got the highest tax per size, property tax or commercial tax per community of comparable size. That reputation carries a lot of weight.
Sure.
So we have to be careful that we're not taxing ourselves, even if we do have a legitimate budget and legitimate expenses. We can't have a reputation at the highest taxes in the province. So that to me is wrong. And it doesn't say we're open for opportunity, or represents an opportunity where you can make things happen. So I'm just cautious. You should have it as a reference. Whether they're apples to apples, it doesn't really matter. You should have it, we're ballparking. And I don't think we can bury that anywhere. We just have to compare to the broad world or the province. So that's my take.
All right, Councillor Brooks.
I can send it to you, but
Yeah, we
puts
got
it out every year. You can look at it.
Yeah, but it should be open for discussion.
2021, I think,
Yeah,
Rebel
we should
Set
all.
was 50th out of 162.
I had a guy come to me the other day and said we were the fourth highest business tax in the province.
I don't know.
So I don't know how to answer that.
Any, Ms. McCabe, you have your hand up.
I'm going to just comment that sometimes the confusion that happens with comparing across communities is that, for instance, if you're looking in, it could be the difference between what the municipality provides versus what the regional district provides. And so in some communities, a lot of the services that we provide in our community are actually done by a greater city group like Metro Vancouver, or just the Greater Vernon, North Okanagan, those kind of things. Their regional districts provide many of their recreational facilities and other things as well, whereas we actually provide all that here within the city. So again, it's the same thing with the water. It is a challenge to compare if you're not making sure you're comparing to communities that provide the same services. Snow removal obviously is another one where our level of service for snow removal is above and beyond what any other community provides, other than maybe Kitimat. So again, they may be looking at their school taxes and they could be looking at a lot more, but the biggest part is what does your municipality provide versus what does their municipality provide. And so ours is built into our municipal rates, but in other communities, it might be built into their regional district rates.
All right.
Yeah, you're talking specifics. I'm looking for averages. So,
yeah, you got to average the same thing though, right? If you average boys and girls together, then you're going to get a number.
You debate the differences, right? You say, why is it different? You say, okay, that makes sense. But you still should have the information discussed.
All right, good. Thank you all for your comments. Anything further on the motion on the table? Seeing nothing, I will call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. All right, Ms. Floyd, Ms. Rousseau, do we have any questions from the press?
We do not, Your Worship.
All right, seeing none, I will call for termination of the meeting. Councillor Ryan, seconded by Councillor Brooks Hill. All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Council. Thank you, staff. Thank you, Mr. Andrews, for being present. We appreciate somebody coming.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you.